says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one you're loving?
Kathy in Kansas City, welcome to the Karen Hunter Show. You're on with Dr. Cornel West. Hi.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Dr. West. Thank you for taking my call. I'll be quick.
Okay.
I have a question regarding your presidency. If you see that over the past few years, the Senate race has always been tight and we're always clinching, and, with cinema switching parties, why not try running for Senate instead of the presidency, since that's where most of our power comes from? It's not from the president. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. It's a wonderful question. I live in Harlem, 110th Street. Thank God we got our new city councilman, Brother Salim. I'm glad to be in his corner. What would it be like to run for senator of New York rather than president on the Green Party? Because see, I'm just so disenchanted with the two parties. I'm just thoroughly convinced that they're just too tied to Wall Street. They're too tied to Pentagon. They don't really want to focus on poor working people. If I ran for a Senate in New York, that would be a possibility. But the problem is, even the Senate, it's so much a site of legalized bribery and normalized corruption. Once you get in there, you get thoroughly absorbed and co-opted so quickly. It's much more difficult to do that when you go straight for the presidency. But I do hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I'm going to have to think that through.
But Dr. West, you don't think that the presidency isn't corrupted and co-opted? I mean, we just saw Supreme Court justices take money for years, never disclose it, and from people who wanted to overthrow Roe v. Wade and affirmative action, and there's nothing we could do about it. It seems that power, you know the term, absolute power corrupts. So how do you know
right about that? But the difference is, you tell me what you think here, but the difference is that when you have one person and that person is you don't have to deal with trying to coordinate with the will of 99 other senators in wielding power and shaping one's authority. See? So if as one person in the executive branch, if you're already subject to legalized bribery, then you're just going to fall right into co-optation. But if you get a different kind of person, you get a free black man or a free black woman or a free human being who's fundamentally concerned about the interests over against Wall Street, over against the Pentagon, you're going to have a different kind of battle.
I suspect, and walk me through this, because I'm definitely going to get the rest of the call. So thank you, Kathy, in Kansas City, that the presidency is not a king. The president is not a king. So the president has very limited powers, right? And I feel like many of us feel like the president could just come in and do anything that the president wants to do. But it's not the case. There are so many constrictions around so I feel like you're actually more bound as a person, activism wise, if you were to become president than you are right now as a citizen, getting arrested, going out in the streets, fighting for the justices and rights of other people. I feel like that would hem you up.
And that's a very good point, but on two fronts. One is you got executive orders. In that sense, you almost are king-like or queen-like. You don't have to worry about legislation. Look at the cluster bombs that Biden was able to do, which are crimes against humanity, war crimes. How did he do that? Executive order. He went around the law. They passed a law under Obama, there would never be cluster bombs. How you do? Well, it's a 1% versus 2.5%. I'm going to waiver this law and I'm going to do it under this law. So that executive order is a lot of power for the president. But the other one is the bully pulpit. You see that you got the press and you are helping shape the dialogue. You're going to the prisons. You're going to the hoods. You're going to the school in the hoods. We're going to do something about this. We're going to have a dialogue with this homeless brother. We're going to eliminate this homelessness. This is not an afterthought. Very few presidents do that kind of thing.
Tomorrow, say you get elected. How do you eliminate homelessness, Dr. West? What's the plan?
Massive abolition of poverty. We need $190 billion to make sure that everybody has access to a decent house, has access to food. Make sure your trade union movement strong enough so you have living wages. Make sure that you have access to resources. You need massive reinvestment from military to resources for people's basic social needs. We have it. It's just that when we have wars, we get trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars for the war. We could abolish poverty with $190 billion.
Right. I feel like most Americans are not dialed into this war thing like you are. I think a lot of us are thinking about the food, clothing, and shelter right here, the clean water that we need, the air that we need to breathe that needs to not come from Canada, and the schools that are crumbling, the infrastructure that's like we have daily things that are happening in our lives that the president absolutely should be leaning into, including the unhoused.
Absolutely, and if with all that money and resources we spend on war, on military, if that went into precisely the kind of issues that we're talking about, we'd have a different kind of society.
But again, that's not the president's purview. Even the budget doesn't fall under you.
The president lays out the budget and presents the budget to the legislative branch, presents it to Congress. I got my priorities now.
Okay.
I would have my priorities. I can tell you that right now, very much so. And we haven't got the reparations yet. We haven't got the reparations yet. Reparations
would also not fall under your purview. They haven't even. That's a congressional act. That's a congressional act to even study it.
But using the bully pulpit and saying that in the name of truth and justice, we're gonna make sure that we repair this damage done to these precious Black folk over these vicious years of slavery and neo-slavery and Jim Crow. Set the framework. Tell the truth. And then see what the Congress gonna do. Then mobilize the people to put pressure on Congress.
All right, let's take Herman in Oklahoma.
Hey, Karen, how you doing?
I'm
Dr.
great.
West, how you doing also?
How you doing, my brother? Oklahoma now.
Great. Yeah, I'm from Oklahoma. So first off, I'm not going to say you're not going to win because if Trump can win, I'm sorry, y'all, anybody can win. So let's just be real with that, okay? Next thing is, my question is, how are you going to what's your strategy for becoming more relatable to the American public and so they can understand you so that you can put yourself in a position to win?
Well, one, I make myself available by making sure that I'm in a variety of different communities. I'm on TV, on radio, and on the special Karen Hunter show with her audience. We're gonna have a kickoff in Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. I want folk to know that that's really the starting point in so many ways. It's the Emmett Till 68th anniversary with that precious brother who was murdered on the one hand, but whose spirit is bouncing back in a magnificent way. So you just have to make yourself available, brother, just like a blues man or a jazz woman. You go from place to place and club to club and church to church and temple to temple and synagogue to synagogue and mosque to mosque, on the street, on the corner, on television. Make yourself available, trying to bear witness and get your message out.
Amen.
But I was born in Oklahoma, so I just want to let you know that, though, brother. So
Were you?
Yes, I was. I was born in
What?
the same hospital as the Wilson brothers, Uncle Charlie, Moton Hospital, Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Gap Band.
Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. The Gap
That's
Band.
right.
It was our brother from Tulsa.
No, I don't think so. I don't think.
Okay.
Did he hang up? I think he hung up. Because I told him to make it quick, so they asked their question.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to Houston, Texas. Roy, thank you for holding. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show. You're on with Dr. Cornel West.
Yes. Two questions. One, you said you with Bernie. Bernie went for reparation. How you feel about reparation? Question number two, when you think it'd be better you run with Democrat Party, if you got good agenda, I think you'll get enough people to vote for you. If you have the right agenda. So I'm going to hang up and listen. That's the question I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
No, appreciate my dear brother from Houston. My mother was born in Orange, Texas, right down the road from Houston. My brother was born in Port Arthur, Texas. That one, I've already talked about reparations being a very important part of my program. It was not a part of Brother Bernie's. Again, he's my dear brother. We just had disagreements. Right now he's very much for Biden with AOC and the others. We just have disagreements. I can still love folk when I disagree with him, but I'm just honest about my disagreements. But secondly, you see, the Democratic Party, one, of course, is having no debates in its primary whatsoever. So you're not even going to have public conversation about the issue. They've already coronated Biden. So that I would be wasting my time running for the Democratic Party. My voice would not be heard. I come from a tradition of a people whose anthem is lift every voice. Karen's voice, brother from Houston, sister's voice, Damon's voice, and so on. And I'm just thoroughly convinced that the Democratic Party at this point is not really interested in speaking to the needs of poor and working people. It's too tied to big money. It's too tied to winning the next election. And yes, when it comes to civil rights and rights for our precious gay brothers and lesbian sisters and trans and precious Black folk and others, that the Democratic Party has a better record than the Republican Party. But when it comes to issues of poverty, when it comes to issues of healthcare, they are slightly better, but not that much. You see, Obamacare just didn't go far enough. You still got 25 million folk who don't have health care at all. Well,
That's
see,
because Congress blocked and governors aren't releasing. There's so many governors that had funding.
They didn't fight for the public option, my dear sister.
They didn't, because it wouldn't have gone through with Mitch McConnell and them. They were blocking every single thing.
Democrats
we didn't show up in the midterms. We didn't show up.
Both houses.
Yeah, and he thought erroneously that he was going to be president of the United States and that he could work and reach across the aisle, and then got his behind handed to him in the midterm. And then couldn't get anything through and was impotent for that first term after that. But that was us not showing up in the midterms and him miscalculating. That was President Obama miscalculating that you actually were the president of the United States and not just a nuisance as a Black man that they wanted to get rid of.
But part of it was they tended to punt on second down rather than fourth down. You got to push as far as you can. And then acknowledge you get all you can, because we've got to get concession. But
Dr. West, you think? So hold on, though. You think about the idealism, because we've all been raised in a nation where the president, you come in and Obama and keep the hope and all of that, and you get in and you feel like, okay, this many white people voted for me. I have to present such a way that I'm here for all of the people. And there was an idealism in that campaign that got a lot of young people voted that never voted before. You have white women voted for Obama, and for twice, not once but twice. So there was this notion that maybe the country had healed and we'd come together, and it was wrong, because when power gets threatened like that, they showed their ass. They showed us who they were, right? And so I get why. I'm totally with you. I'm a bull in a china shop. I'm going to gore and stomp on everything. But we're made a different kind of way. So, maybe now to be different. I don't know, Dr. West. Maybe now we know that they are playing for keeps.
They're playing for keeps. Well, but we've always known anytime you're a threat to the status quo, they coming at you tooth and nail. Look at COINTELPRO, the Black Panther Party, and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., the FBI, and J. Edgar Hoover coming at our Black freedom fighters. We know when we are seriously in love with truth and justice and want to pursue Black people's flowering and flourishing, they're going to come at you come at you directly, and you say, bring it on. That's who we are. Bring it on. Why? Because we come from a great people who've been in the face of all kind of adverse circumstances. And if all you can do is crush us individually, we got other folk coming too. That's our attitude, you see. That's the attitude we have to have, going back to Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass.
As a lover of Christ, as a man that has...
Oh, yeah, sweet Jesus.
Yes.
Indeed.
We live in a nation where folk call themselves evangelical Christians who think they also love Christ, right? Is there a strategy around poking that notion of what it looks like to be a follower of Christ, wrap yourself in a flag and in the Bible, and treat people less than humanely? Is there a space there? Because I'm actually thinking maybe you should run as a Republican as an evangelical, because it's just a title, right? And challenge all, because you care about justice for all and freedom and all. Like maybe there's a strategy there.
Well, the Republican Party is so tied to its own neo-fascism and its own elites as well. But I can tell you this, we got to keep in mind, my dear sister, The disciples themselves either betrayed or left Jesus after he ran those money changers out of the temple and ended up on that Christ. Thank God for Mary Magdalene, sister from the street, who showed up at the tomb. Now, if Peter himself upon this rock shall build his church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it, if he denies Jesus 3 times, you can imagine what these right-wing vanilla Christian evangelicals are doing to the gospel. Is deodorize the gospel. They didn't turn the blood at the cross to Kool-Aid, and some of them use the cross to kill us. Ain't got nothing to do with Jesus whatsoever. Most people who follow Jesus really just want to be on Pontius Pilate's payroll. If you want to get on Pontius Pilate's payroll, then go on and line up and don't drag Jesus into it. Pontius Pilate's the one that put him on the cross. That's what it means to follow Jesus. And that's the Jesus that I learned in Shiloh Baptist Church on the chocolate side of Sacramento, Reverend Willie P. Cook and my mama Irene and Clifton West loving Jesus. That's the sweet Jesus I'm talking about. That's why I'm a free black man.
All right. Let's go to Detroit, to the D. What up, though? Carolyn. Carolyn in Detroit. Hi, welcome.
How are you?
I'm awesome.
Hello, Dr. West.
How you doing, my dear sister? Good to hear your voice.
I'm good. You know, when I saw a picture of Jill Stein sitting at the table with Vladimir Putin and Flynn, you know, she's with the Green Party. And I just want to know, how did you feel about that?
Now, that was what, about 5 or 6 years ago? She was at some kind of gathering or something?
She was running. She was running for president.
Oh, back in 2016.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't know what the dynamics were, nothing like that, but I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for Sister Jill. I can keep track of Putin and his gangster activity. I can keep track of Putin and his repression and so forth. I just speak for myself. I mean, from what I hear, from what she was saying, it was some kind of gathering they had that she was not there to lend her support or anything. She was simply there at the gathering itself. And people have probably sat around a whole lot of different tables of people. They have deep disagreements, but she would have to speak for herself. That's all. But I'm just speaking for myself right now, my dear sister.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Ty in South Carolina. Last question.
Afternoon. Thanks for having me on. Hi, Dr. West.
How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm glad you're on. To me, this is your time to have your voice to potential constituents instead of being attacked or told you can't win. So I have 3 quick topics, and I'd like for you to tell future constituents, what do you do your first 2 quarters if elected president on these 3 topics? These are things in my neck of the woods that are important to me, people I talk to, my family. Number 1, you've touched on it, the proxy war with Russia. What's your stance? What do you do the first 2 quarters? Number 2, the GDP is low and stagnant. It needs to grow. What do you do the first 2 quarters to grow the GDP? And number 3, a social issue. What is your stance on trans women competing against biological women in women's sports? I'll hang up and listen.
Oh, appreciate that. Brother from John Coltrane State, North Carolina, as I recall.
He's South Kakalaki. He's in.
Oh, is it South Carolina?
Yeah, Ty's in South Carolina.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. That's Dizzy Gillespie. Yeah, okay. That's Dizzy Gillespie State. First, the third question, for me, I think it's probably best to have 3 different categories so that you make sure you have fairness in terms of competition. The biological constitution of human bodies is such that you want to make sure you treat everybody with dignity. That's very important, humanely, but you have 3 different categories. The second had to do with the first thing I would do in regard to what was that first question? No, it was about
the proxy war. The proxy war.
Oh, the proxy war. Yes. I think we have to have a ceasefire. There's got to be a stop to war and stopping the war crimes as cluster bombs are used more and more by all sides. Now, what does it mean to have a ceasefire? It means then that you bring together the leaders. As president, I would sit down with the Russians, with the Ukrainians, with the Turks, with the African leaders, and with the Chinese. Those are the ones who called for a ceasefire. Why do you want a ceasefire? You want the suffering to stop. Why? Because we're on the way to World War III. We're on the way to nuclear exchange. Biden had said there would
What's
be
the
no.
evidence for that? Because I feel like there's a little bit of fear mongering, Dr. West. I want to know what the evidence is.
No, because the Russians themselves have said it. They've said explicitly in responding to NATO meeting, we're on the way to World War III because our backs are against the wall, and if we have no choice, we will use nuclear weapons. They've said that explicitly.
If NATO lets Ukraine in, which doesn't seem to be happening, I don't think President Biden, I think, was very clear about not bringing Ukraine into NATO because it would then force America into this and all the NATO alliance into this, and I don't think that's going to happen. I was watching this over the weekend, so if that's not happening, where what would be Putin's impetus to then press a button?
Well, I mean, Putin doesn't need a whole lot of different rational impetus in this regard.
Well, Putin got his own problems. He just almost got taken out by a militant mercenaries in his own. Like, he was this close to being taken out last week.
Well, that's true. It's hard to know what really was going on there because they had that close meeting. 2 days later, they sipping tea together. So it's hard to say. But the important point is that war has a life and logic of its own, and it tends to begin to overflow in such a way that nobody's in control. And when you do have a leader like Putin, and in some ways it'd be a leader like any empire who feel their backs are against the wall, they respond accordingly. You can imagine in the United States, if Russia had missiles in Mexico and Canada pointed at the United States, what would we do? U.S. government would probably blow them to smithereens. We saw that in Cuba in 1962. Why? That's how empires behave. Don't get too close to our borders.
Hold on. We didn't go in and help. We didn't help Georgia. We didn't help. I mean, we're the reason why I feel like Ukraine happened because we reneged on relationships earlier, and we just let China fly balloons over our. I don't feel like America. I don't feel like we want that. I don't feel like we want that as a nation. So I'm gonna push back on us.
Yeah, no, I hear what you say. I hear what you say. I'm just using Cuba 62 as an example. But that second question had to do with the
GDP, with our economy.
Oh.
GDP.
That I would, because I have an abolitionist program of poverty, building on later Martin Luther King Jr. We are going to make sure that we wipe out poverty across the board with massive resources. Even Biden with the relief bill, what did he do? He cut child poverty in half. I applaud it. Now that the law expires, child poverty goes right back up again. We know how to do it. It's just not a priority. That's all. And we got 60% of our fellow citizens wrestling day by day how they gonna pay their bills. And yet, 3 individuals have wealth equivalent to the bottom 50% of the whole nation. We need a massive redistribution of wealth downward. We've had a massive redistribution of wealth upward. Well, we can do that, but it has to be one in which there is a free access to education, social housing, quality housing, Medicare for all, to get big money out of the Medicare system so it's not a profit-driven operation. And we got to deal with ecological collapse, which has to do with fossil fuel industry. And this is just the beginning of a larger discussion, but it's a different priorities. And Martin King said that America was living in a nation, we all live in a nation that has warped priorities. How do we get our priorities right? People, social needs over big money and profits. And I don't have the definitive answer, but I have the vision and I got the right priorities. That's what I'm concerned about.
Reparations, because we started the show talking about reparations. Evanston, Illinois is the first city in our country to actually not just have a reparations plan, but they're also cutting checks. That's starting this summer. What would be your plan as the president of the United States? Because again, Congress would have to pass the law, but you can do something with what's your vision for reparations and what would it look like?
Well, I've been part of the reparations movement, thank God, for over 45 years with the great Randall Robinson, who just passed, God bless his soul, the author of The Debt. You remember that wonderful text, The Debt? Worked with him with Trans-Africa, with Charles Ogletree and others. And what does that mean? It means that I would bring voice and pressure and power to bear for us to come to terms with the truth and justice of the plight of Black people in the history of this nation. If you're going to tell the truth about the nation, you got to tell the truth about the slavery as the foundation, the economic foundation of it, just like indigenous peoples was the land foundation of it, given the genocidal attacks against them. You got to tell the truth about Jim and Jane Crow. You got to tell the truth about redlining. You got to tell the truth about forms of discrimination in which Black people's labor, paying taxes, not getting their return on taxes, generates a certain kind of damage for upward mobility, damage for economic prosperity. Well, what kinds of responses to that damage? And that's what reparations is, the repair of the damages. So we'd have to have a serious discussion. We'd have to have movements, both outside and inside of Congress. And there would be a president who would be using his bully pit to say, if we have any claim to truth and justice, we ought to come to terms with reparations for Black people.
All right, I'm gonna let Jerome in Chicago, because he has a suggestion for you as a slogan.
Absolutely.
So Chicago, Jerome, welcome to the camera. Yes, he is. Hi, welcome.
What's going on, Ken?
Hey.
Dr. West, it's a supreme honor to speak with you today. We're going to run Karen Hunter for president in 2028. I'm going to give her office. You can't refuse. No. But listen, Dr. West.
Yes, my dear brother from Chi-Town, yes.
I have 3 words because I know Karen wants me to be pithy. She trained me well. I got 3 words for you. And I read your book, man. I was in line reading your book. West matters for president. Double entendre.
Lord have mercy, my brother. Woo. Well, we going out on a high note from Chicago, my brother. I can tell you that.
I got 3.
Lord,
yes.
Lord.
So book, man. I was in line reading the book. Less matters for president. Double entendre.
Yes.
Good.
All right.
God Almighty. You know, it reminds me of that high C that Louis Armstrong hits in West End Blues that King Oliver wrote. He hit that note for his mama when she died. Nobody's ever hit that high note on a trumpet. You can ask Wynton Marsalis about that, because he's a towering figure. He's been trying to hit it too. You taking us on a high note, brother. I can tell you that right now.
First of all, I don't know what the future holds. As the brother said, Trump won. Anything's possible. I believe in possibilities. We live in abundance. So anything is possible, Dr. West. I appreciate you giving us time today and holding court with us. I also appreciate your contributions in Nubia, in djembes and chorus, talking about music, which is your other love, people. I appreciate you doing that, several sessions. And I thank you for coming through today. You answered every question. I made sure I got to everybody. So thank you so much.
I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one